Hi, I'm David Goforth with Cooperative Extension Successful Gardener. Today I'm over at UNCC, which is just right outside the Cabarrus County lines at McMillan Greenhouses. With me today is Dr. Larry Mellenchamp with the Department of Botany here he's a professor of the Department of Botany here at UNCC. He's also director of the Botanical Gardens here, so it's nice to have you with us today, Larry.
Thank you, David. I'm glad to be here.
Among the many other things that you do here, y'all have well, first of all, tell me about the greenhouses here. Now, these are open to the public, right?
Yes, the McMillan Greenhouse is open 7 days a week, Monday through Saturday from 10 to 3, and Sunday from 1 to 4. And people are welcome to come walk through the greenhouses. We have lots of orchids and other interesting plants right now. And then they can go just across the street. We have 10 acres of outdoor gardens. Native wildflowers are just coming up, and winter blooming plants are still going strong. So there's a lot to see here.
In addition, y'all have a plant sale that's coming up this month.
We have a big plant sale. It's in April. It's April the 17th and 18th, our big annual plant sale. We sell a lot of wildflowers. We're one of the best sources of wildflowers and native plants in this area. Plus we have a lot of unusual bedding plants and house plants. We try to grow unusual things that you can't find just anywhere.
And one of the more unusual ones is the Carnivorous Plants. I think this is the best place if a person wanted to get some of them.
That's correct. We are very famous here for our Carnivorous plants, our pitcher plants, Venus flytraps, and sundews. We have one of the best displays anywhere in this whole region. And so all summer long these plants are out here looking good, and we love for people to come see them.
Now, I've never seen these type of plants in nature, and I think I've been some places where I thought I ought to have seen them.
Sure. Well, North Carolina is very famous for its carnivorous plants. We have more different kinds of carnivorous plants than anywhere in the world. And to see them, you would go down south of Wilmington to an area called the Green Swamp in Brunswick County. And that's the native home of the Venus flytrap. The only place in the world it grows is within a 60-mile radius of Wilmington, North Carolina. And down in the same area are 4 species of pitcher plants and 4 species of sundews and butterworts and bladderworts. So there are 5 different kinds of carnivorous plants there.
Is that a fairly fragile habitat? Do you need to have a guide to go through it?
You do. It's hard to just drive along, stop, hop out of the car. There are certain places you can go if you know what you're looking for. The habitat is a wetland. It's a 15,000 acre wetland nature preserve called the Green Swamp. And in there are certain places that are easy to get to, and you'd kind of have to know where you're going. Nature Conservancy owns it, and they take tours there periodically. But there are no fences. People can drive and stop along the roadside and poke around, and if they see something that they want to look at.
It's where I've seen a lot more of those in people's yards, actually. We're going right here in Cabarrus and Mecklenburg counties.
For the past 20 years, David, I've been popularizing growing carnivorous plants as bog garden subjects. As the rise in popularity of water gardening goes hand in hand with an interest in bog gardening, because bogs are wetlands that are saturated, but there's no liquid water. So for example, this little dish garden, here's a bog garden that we actually teach classes here in building a little bog garden. So this is a 12-inch diameter plastic bowl in which we put a soil medium of peat and sand, about 60% peat, and then we put in various carnivorous plants, a Venus flytrap, a sundew, a pitcher plant, and then we put other bog plants that grow well with the carnivorous plants, the orange milkwort, the marsh pink, 3 different kinds of orchids, and a few other bog plants. And this makes a spectacular bowl of plants that look great all summer long. And if they're not blooming, they're attracting insects, and so there's activity around them. And all you have to do is give it full sun and keep it wet. So on a hot summer day here, you might have to water these once a day, every day.
Now, does it have the normal drainage hole?
It does have a drainage hole.
Just one drainage hole?
One drainage hole. These are wetland plants, not aquatic plants. So they don't want to be in standing water, but they do want to stay moist. And you don't have to fertilize them. They catch their own fertilizer. In other words, they catch insects, and that acts as a fertilizer for them, because in the wild they grow in nutrient-poor soils.
Now, is this is a flower bud for this year?
This is a flower bud for the pitcher plant just coming up. And these are last year's pitchers, and we'll cut those off pretty soon so the new pitchers can come up, because they are perennials. All of these plants are perennials, and you could leave this outside year-round. It could freeze solid. As long as it stays moist, it's okay. We bring them inside when the temperature goes down to the 20s, simply to prevent freezing and thawing effect on the pot.
Right.
But the plants can take the cold weather. They're
How big will this bloom be eventually?
The bloom of the pitcher plant will be about the size of a daffodil. In fact, one of the common names of these pitcher plants is buttercups, because their flowers look like and bloom about the same time as the daffodils in people's yards. And they, depending on which species you have, they'll either be yellow or red, because of the 4 species we have in North Carolina, 2 of them have red flowers and 2 have yellow flowers.
Now tell me, if I wanted to do a little bit bigger bog garden in my lawn, in my landscape, incorporate it some way, what would your suggestions be?
What you see here is an in-ground bog garden. It's a 10-foot diameter oval. It's made out of standard, you can buy it, garden centers, 4-inch thick wall bricks for building walls. And these are stacked up 4 high, so they're 16 inches high, and that raises it up a little bit, easier to get to. And then this oval is lined with a rubber swimming pool or a pond liner, good quality pond liner. And then it's we put a little bit of pine needles in the bottom of it, but then it's mostly filled in with peat and sand. Now, that takes a lot of peat to make something this big. Several, you could calculate how many cubic feet. It's 4 by 10 and 1 foot deep. So that's 40 cubic feet of peat. And then we mix into that about half of sand. And then we punch a few holes in the bottom of the liner so that it drains, but it still holds water. Then we plant the pitcher plants. So each of these is a clump of a different kind of pitcher plant. And these get quite tall in the summer. We've cut back the old leaves from last year because they die down in the winter. And as time goes on, the pitcher plants get bigger and bigger clumps, so the bog fills in. But once you've created your box, it can either be made out of wood or stone. You put in your liner, you put in your peat and sand, make sure it's pre-moistened, then you plant your plants, and then you just stand back and let them grow, and be sure you keep them wet.
So the liner actually comes up how close to the surface?
The liner comes up to the next to the top brick. The liner is 1 brick down.
Okay.
So that excess water can drain off the top.
Right.
And then we just go ahead and fill it near the top with the peat and sand, and you can't see the liner, but it's down there.
Okay. Now I've seen people try to do this right in ground level, and do you think that works as well?
Sure, you could do that. You could put we've used a child's wading pool, a little plastic wading pool sunk in the ground, and put your peat and sand in there. Or you can dig a hole out of the clay, put a liner in the ground, peat and sand. I've seen that. If by some rare circumstance you have a permanently wet place in your yard, you could dig out the clay and put in a peat and sand, and you could grow carnivorous plants there. But it's gotta be wet 365 days a year. These cannot tolerate any drying at all. And they need full sun, so you can't put this in the shade.
Right. Even
1 tree you won't get full productivity. These need even more sun than tomato plants. These really want to have 8 hours of direct sun a day to do well.
Can you show us just a little bit of the digestion? We've heard about that a number of times, but Just show me a little bit about how the insects are digested.
Let me pick one of these pitcher plants. Pitcher plants are among our most beautiful native plants. The leaf is a hollow tube. I can stick my finger down in there. And each pitcher plant has a hood over the mouth of the tube to keep out rainwater. And so it will attract insects to nectar. Nectar is produced around the mouth of the pitcher. And also some of them have spots and colorful markings or white markings and red veins to almost mimic a flower. And then this attracts insects, flies, beetles, moths, yellow jackets, wasps, all kind of insects come here seeking the nectar, and then a certain percentage of them will fall down into the pitcher accidentally, just like a child playing around a well. Eventually they're going to fall in. And the insects can't get out because they're downward pointing hairs inside, so they die and fall into the tube. In fact, Dave, I don't know whether you can see, but this level of this tube is filled with insects from last year. These are the undigested parts of insects in here. And if you cut this open, you'd be able to see them. So the pitcher plant attracts insects all summer, and they're digested in here by a digestive juice, very much like stomach acid. And so the soft parts of the insect are digested. The pitcher plant absorbs that nutrient, and then the indigestible parts just accumulate in there. And in the winter, when the leaves freeze, they'll fall over on the ground and decompose and return even more of that nutrient back to the soil. But they get most of the goodies out of the soft tissue of the insects in the tubes.
So if a beginner was just starting this garden on their own, is this one of the plants that you would recommend in there?
Absolutely. Pitcher plants, especially hybrids. At our plant sale, we'll have a number of attractive hybrid pitcher plants that are very vigorous, easy to grow. Just like other plants in the garden, sometimes the hybrids are better. They show hybrid vigor. They've been developed in cultivation. They're adapted for these kind of situations. They're much better than bringing them in from the wild, and the hybrids are often more colorful than the wild species. And so everything in this bed are hybrids. And there are probably a dozen different plants in here. I started hybridizing these myself in 1985, and I've created probably some of the world's most famous pitcher plant hybrids. And these all have names. One of my first ones was Fly's Demise. That's that one growing right there. We have one called Doodlebug. That's this one.
Yeah.
A little one over here that is totally dormant right now is called Ladybug. And then we have one called Lovebug, and we have one called Redbug. So that's my little bug series that I developed over the past 20 years. So we got tall ones like this one that I showed you. We've got short ones. We've got ones that spread. So those that form clumps. Some are very brightly colored. The flowers of these are beautiful. When this bed blooms in late April and early May, each of these clumps makes a different color of flower, and the flowers will just cover the surface. They get about a foot tall. They'll be yellow, orange, red, pinks. The hybrids blend the different colors of the wild species and give you a phenomenally beautiful range of colors.
I believe you were going to show me the Venus flytraps.
Yeah, the Venus flytraps
situation.
Here. Yeah, Venus flytraps are certainly the world's most famous carnivorous plant. And here's a Venus flytrap. They don't get very big. The trap, the biggest ones I've ever seen, is the trap about an inch long. So you do not have to worry about losing your children and pets to these plants. They won't hurt if you stick your finger in them. They're not that strong. They only eat small ants and spiders and flies and small insects that get in. And the trap consists of two halves of hinged together, and there are tiny little trigger hairs down inside. And when the insect goes in and touches those trigger hairs, the trap snaps shut in less than a second. And then it closes tighter and tighter, squeezes the prey, then it secretes a liquid digestive juice that dissolves it, and then after about a week it opens up again to catch more insects.
Now, is this a flower bud here?
No, that's a new leaf.
That's a new leaf.
The flower bud is right there.
Okay.
So these do have white flowers that get up about 8 inches tall. They bloom in June. But right now they're just beginning to produce new leaves. They're coming out of dormancy. And the secret to growing these, David, you know, every young person wants to grow a Venus flytrap, and we'll have lots of these for sale at our spring sale. The secret to growing them is sunlight. They're not good houseplants. You've got to grow them outside in the sun, and you can't let them dry out. So that is kind of special. You can't just set them on the patio and forget about them. You've got to keep them watered. Now, the other famous carnivorous plant are the sundews. Sundews catch insects on these sticky little hairs and tiny little insects. You see some little gnats have been caught there right now. Those little hairs catch the insect, and then the little hairs curl over and oppress the insect against the leaf surface so that it can be digested in the same way.
The nutrients just go straight into the stem.
Nutrients absorb directly into the leaf after they're softened by the digestive juices. So it works exactly the same way as your stomach. You eat a piece of chicken, the bones can't be digested, so most people don't eat the chicken bone, but they eat the meat. The meat's digested and absorbed by your body the same way. It's sort of like the plant has to eat the whole insect, but only the soft parts get used, and the dead husk, the indigestible skin, just sort of stays there, and plant can't spit it out, so they just stay on the leaf, and the plant's always growing new leaves. So
this has been very interesting. Now tell me again, where can I purchase some of these plants?
Well, we have all of them here at our spring plant sale, April 17th and 18th. That's a Friday and a Saturday. There's also a man that sells them over at the Mecklenburg County Yorkmont Road Farmers Market in the summertime. And so if you can't make it to our sale, you could go over there. I do not think you have anyone in Cabarrus County at the farmers market who sells them.
Not to my knowledge.
But folks, they can be obtained, and they can also be gotten by mail order. There are a number of mail order places, but I would recommend people come see what we have in person, so they can get some idea of the different types of carnivorous plants that we have, and the other plants that go with them, the orchids and the other bog plants that make for a beautiful display of native plants. Folks here should be proud that the Carolinas have so many different carnivorous plants.
Well, I think so.
It's just that they're kind of hard to see because they grow down in places that we don't go very often. The swamplands, kind of hot and humid, and mosquitoes in the summertime, perfect place for carnivorous plants, but not perfect places for humans.
Well, I think it would be a lot better to come over here and visit them in your greenhouse gardens here.
And we have a number. Children love to come see these, and you can touch them. You can sit here and watch the flies. We were just looking at a fly a few minutes ago on this warm day. Visit the plants, and sort of a dynamic situation where you've got activity. One other little thing to say is one misconception people have. It's not the flowers. The flowers do not catch and eat insects. The flowers use insects for pollination. It's strictly the leaves. That catch and digest the insects.
Well, Larry, I appreciate you showing us that carnivorous plants today. I find them very interesting myself. If you've got questions about carnivorous plants, you probably need to come over here to the plant sale and find somebody. If you've got questions about bog gardening, I can give you some information on designing a bog and getting it started in your yard. Or if you have any other horticulture questions, you can contact me at the office. And until next time, plan and plant for a better world.